Imagine a world where Amazon or Google did not just dominate the internet, but actually owned a country. Imagine if a tech company had its own army, its own navy, its own currency, and the legal right to wage war. Imagine if the CEO of that company could collect taxes from millions of people and put anyone who refused in a private prison. This sounds like the plot of a dystopian science fiction movie, but it is actually a precise description of history. We are often taught that the British Empire conquered India. We imagine redcoats marching under the Union Jack and planting the flag for king and country. But that is a lie. The British government did not conquer India. A private corporation did. This is the story of the Honorable East India Company. It was the first multinational corporation in history, and to this day, it remains the most terrifying example of what happens when profit is the only law. It was a company that was born in a small office in London with a handful of employees and grew until it ruled over 200 million people. It did not invade nations for ideology or religion or glory. It invaded them for shareholder value. It dismantled one of the richest civilizations on earth, not with a sword, but with a ledger. This is the story of the most ruthless startup in the history of capitalism. To understand how a single company could swallow a subcontinent, we have to go back to the very beginning. The year is 1600. London is a dirty, chaotic city recovering from the plague. Queen Elizabeth I is on the throne, but the royal treasury is running low. A group of 218 merchants gather in a building in the city of London. They are looking for a way to break the monopoly of the Dutch spice trade. At this time, spices like nutmeg and cloves and pepper are worth more than their weight in gold. The Dutch control the trade routes, and they are charging extortionate prices. The English merchants want a piece of the action. They approach the Queen with a revolutionary idea. They propose a new type of business organization. In the past, businesses were usually owned by one family. If the business failed, the family lost everything. But these merchants propose a joint stock company. This means that hundreds of people can invest money and receive shares in the company. If the ship sinks, they only lose their investment, not their entire fortune. This concept of limited liability allows them to raise massive amounts of capital. The Queen agrees. On New Year's Eve, 1600, she grants them a royal charter. The Governor and Company of Merchants of London. Trading into the East Indies is born. They have a monopoly on all English trade east of the Cape of Good Hope. They have the right to buy land, and most importantly, they have the right to arm their ships. The early years of the company are not filled with conquest. They are filled with failure. The company tries to go to the Spice Islands in modern Indonesia, but the Dutch are too strong. In 1623, the Dutch massacre a group of English traders at Amboina. The East India Company is humiliated. They are kicked out of the spice trade. Desperate for a new market, they turn their eyes to India. When the first company ships arrive on the coast of India, they are not greeted as conquerors. They are barely noticed. India in the 17th century is the home of the Mughal Empire. It is a superpower. The Mughal emperor rules over a quarter of the world's manufacturing capacity. The cities of Delhi and Agra are larger and richer than London and Paris combined. The Mughal emperor sits on the peacock throne, which is encrusted with so many diamonds and rubies that it is worth more than the entire national budget of England. The English traders are awestruck. They are like beggars knocking on the door of a palace. They have to beg the emperor for permission to build small warehouses, which they call factories. The Emperor Jahangir looks at these strange pale men in their uncomfortable wool clothes, and he is amused. He grants them a few trading posts on the coast. For the next 100 years, the company behaves like a typical business. They buy cotton and silk and indigo. They pay in silver. They are polite. They are subservient. They know that if they anger the Mughal emperor, his armies will crush them like ants. But businesses are like living organisms. They want to grow. And in the early 18th century, the environment in India changes dramatically. The great Mughal emperor Aurangzeb dies in 1707. His successors are weak. The empire begins to fracture. Regional governors known as Nawabs start to declare independence. Warlords rise up. The central authority in Delhi collapses. India descends into chaos. In London, the directors of the East India Company see an opportunity. They realize that in a lawless world, they cannot just be merchants. They need to be soldiers. They begin to fortify their warehouses. They hire local mercenaries. They start to intervene in the politics of the local princes. They realize that it is cheaper to install a puppet ruler who will give them tax breaks than it is to pay the full price for goods. The merchant is becoming a kingmaker. The turning point comes in 1757. The location is a mango grove in Bengal called Plassey. The company has a new enemy, the Nawab of Bengal Siraj-ud-Dawla. The Nawab is a young, hot-headed ruler who is tired of the company's arrogance. He is tired of them building forts without permission. He marches on the company's settlement in Calcutta and captures it. He locks the British prisoners in a small dungeon which becomes known as the Black Hole of Calcutta. The company strikes back. They send an army from Madras led by a man named Robert Clive. Robert Clive is one of the most controversial figures in history. He is not a professional soldier. He is a clerk. He started his career counting beans in a warehouse. But he is a natural psychopath. He is violent, unstable, and ruthlessly ambitious. He is the perfect CEO for a militarized corporation. Clive marches to Plassey to face the Nawab's army. On paper, it is a suicide mission. The Nawab has 50,000 soldiers. Clive has 3,000. The Nawab has heavy French artillery. Clive has a few cannons. If this were a normal battle, the British would be wiped out. But Plassey is not a battle. It is a business transaction. Robert Clive knows that he cannot win by fighting, so he opens the company's checkbook. He finds the Nawab's top general, a man named Mir Jafar. He offers Mir Jafar a deal. If Mir Jafar keeps his troops out of the fight, Clive will make him the new Nawab of Bengal. Mir Jafar accepts. The deal is signed. The contracts are exchanged. When the battle begins, the Nawab orders his cavalry to charge. But Mir Jafar sits on his horse and does nothing. His vast army stands still and watches. The Nawab realizes he has been betrayed. He flees the battlefield. Robert Clive walks into the enemy camp without barely firing a shot. He has conquered a province the size of France with a bribe. The aftermath of Plassey reveals the true nature of the company. They do not annex Bengal for England. They install Mir Jafar as their puppet. And then they present him with the bill. They demand millions of pounds in compensation. They empty the treasury of Bengal. They load boats with gold and silver and jewels and send them down the river to Calcutta. Robert Clive himself takes a personal fortune that makes him the richest man in Europe. He later tells Parliament that he was astonished at his own moderation. But the looting of the treasury is just the beginning. The company realizes that they have stumbled upon a new business model. Why buy cotton and silk with silver sent from London when you can just use the tax money of the Indian people to buy their own goods? In 1765, the Mughal emperor, who is now powerless, grants the company the Diwani. This is the legal right to collect revenues in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Overnight, a private corporation becomes the tax collector for 20 million people. The fox is now in charge of the henhouse. The company increases taxes relentlessly. They do not care if the harvest fails. They do not care if the peasants starve. They have shareholders in London who expect a dividend. The ruthless efficiency of corporate accounting is applied to tax farming. The result is the Great Bengal Famine of 1770. It is a catastrophe of biblical proportions. The rains fail and the crops wither. In the past, the local rulers would have lowered taxes or opened the grain silos to feed the people. But the company does not lower taxes. In fact, in some areas, they increase them to make up for the lost revenue. They force farmers to grow cash crops like indigo and opium instead of food because those crops are more profitable for export. The people of Bengal begin to die. They die in the fields. They die in the streets of Calcutta. The rivers are clogged with corpses because there is no one left to bury them. 1/3 of the population of Bengal perishes. 10 million people starve to death. It is one of the greatest crimes in human history. And while the people are dying, the company's ships are still leaving the port full of silk and muslin bound for the markets of London. The company's share price holds steady. The dividends are paid on time. In London, the news of the famine causes a scandal. People are horrified by the stories of greed and cruelty coming out of India. They call the company officials nabobs, a corruption of the Mughal title Nawab. These men return to England with vulgar amounts of wealth. They buy country estates and seats in Parliament. They corrupt the British political system with their stolen gold. The British government realizes that the company has become a monster. It is too big to be independent. It is a state within a state. But they are also trapped. The British economy is now dependent on the tea and textiles coming from India. The government cannot destroy the company without destroying itself. So they begin a slow process of regulation. They pass acts to control the directors. They appoint a governor general to oversee the company's affairs. The first governor general is Warren Hastings. He is a brilliant administrator who tries to clean up the corruption. But the logic of the company is inescapable. To pay for the administration and the dividends they need to expand, they need more land, more taxpayers, and more markets. War becomes a necessity of business. The company's army grows. It is a unique force. The officers are British, but the soldiers are Indian. They are called sepoys. They are trained in European drill and discipline. They are paid regularly, which is rare in India at the time. The company uses the wealth of Bengal to hire the finest army in Asia. They use Indian money and Indian blood to conquer India. They turn their gaze to the south, to the kingdom of Mysore, ruled by the Tiger Tipu Sultan. They turn to the west, to the Maratha Empire. One by one, the independent powers of India fall before the corporate machine. The strategy is always the same. Subsidiary alliances. The company offers to protect a local ruler with their troops. In exchange, the ruler has to pay for the troops. If he falls behind on the payments, the company seizes his territory. It is a protection racket on a geopolitical scale. By the early 19th century, the company is the master of the subcontinent. They have mapped the land, they have built telegraphs, they have established a bureaucracy that is the envy of the world, but they have also destroyed the soul of India. They have dismantled the textile industry of Bengal to protect the factories of Manchester. They have turned a self-sufficient civilization into a raw material supplier for the British Industrial Revolution. This was not accidental, it was policy. The company directors in Leadenhall Street in London discussed these matters in board meetings. They looked at spreadsheets. They calculated the margin on opium. They calculated the yield on land tax. They treated the lives of millions of people as entries in a ledger. They proved that a corporation can be far more efficient at exploitation than a king ever could be, because a corporation has no conscience. It has no soul. It has only a fiduciary duty to its shareholders. As we end the first part of this story, we see the company at the height of its power. It controls more land than the Roman Empire. It generates more revenue than the British government. But beneath the surface, the pressure is building. The people of India are seething with rage. The sepoys, the very backbone of the company's power, are growing restless. The greed of the company has pushed the system to the breaking point. The startup has become a monopoly, and like all monopolies, it has become arrogant and blind. In the second part, we will see how the world's most powerful corporation collapsed in a storm of blood and fire, and how its legacy continues to shape the world we live in today. The year is 1850. The East India Company stands as the Colossus of Asia. Its flag flies from the Khyber Pass in the north to the tropical jungles of Burma in the east. It has defeated the French, the Dutch, and every Indian prince who dared to stand against it. In London, the headquarters of the company on Leadenhall Street is the true center of global power. In the boardrooms, men in frock coats decide the fate of nations between sips of sherry. They decide who will starve and who will eat. They decide which borders will be drawn and which ancient laws will be overturned. To the outside observer, the company looks invincible. It looks eternal. But inside the machine, the gears are grinding. The company has grown too fast. It has swallowed more territory than it can digest. The cost of maintaining a standing army of 300,000 men is astronomical. Despite the looting of India, the company is constantly teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. It is the classic paradox of the too-big-to-fail corporation. It generates massive revenue, but its operating costs are even higher. To stay solvent, it has to keep expanding. It has to keep finding new sources of revenue. This need for cash leads the company into one of the darkest chapters of corporate history. The opium trade. The company has a problem with China. The British public is addicted to Chinese tea. Millions of pounds of tea are imported every year, but the Chinese emperor has no interest in British goods. He demands payment in silver. The company is bleeding silver. They need a product that the Chinese want. They find it in the poppy fields of India. The company creates a monopoly on the production of opium in Bengal. They force farmers to grow poppies. They process the drug in massive factories. Then they smuggle it into China. It is a state-sponsored drug cartel. When the Chinese government tries to stop the trade, the company uses its influence to drag the British government into a war. The opium wars are fought to ensure the right of a corporation to sell illegal drugs to a foreign population. It is the ultimate expression of the company's philosophy. Profit at any cost. Back in India, the atmosphere is changing. The early generation of company men who learned the local languages and married Indian women is gone. They have been replaced by a new breed of bureaucrat. These men are racist, arrogant, and distant. They despise the people they rule. They introduce reforms that threaten the social fabric of Indian society. They introduce missionaries who try to convert the population to Christianity. They introduce new laws that allow them to seize the land of any prince who dies without a biological heir. This is called the doctrine of lapse. It is a legal trick to steal kingdoms. The resentment is felt most keenly by the sepoys. These are the Indian soldiers who make up 90% of the company's army. They are proud men often from high castes. They have fought and died for the company for 100 years, but now they feel threatened. They see the company attacking their religion and their traditions. They see their pay declining in real terms. They see that no matter how brave they are, they can never rise above the rank of a petty officer. They are mercenaries, fighting for a master who despises them. The spark that lights the fuse is a rumor. It is the year 1857. The company introduces a new rifle, the Enfield Pattern 53. To load the rifle, the soldier has to bite off the end of a paper cartridge. The rumor spreads through the barracks like wildfire. The cartridges are greased with the fat of cows and pigs. To the Hindu soldiers, the cow is sacred. To the Muslim soldiers, the pig is unclean. They believe that the company is trying to destroy their caste and their religion so that they can be converted to Christianity. The company officers dismiss the fears. They laugh at the soldiers. They order them to use the cartridges or face court-martial. It is a fatal error of management. They have forgotten that you cannot manage an army like you manage a warehouse. On a hot Sunday in May in the town of Meerut, the sepoys mutiny. They kill their British officers. They break open the jails. They march to Delhi, the old capital of the Mughal Empire. The Great Rebellion of 1857 has begun. The British call it the Mutiny. The Indians call it the First War of Independence. Whatever you call it, it is the bloodiest conflict in the history of the British Empire. The sepoys capture Delhi. They proclaim the old Mughal emperor as the leader of the rebellion. The revolt spreads across the Ganges plain. Entire regiments turn their guns on their masters. The company's authority collapses in days. For a moment, it looks like the company is finished. The British are besieged in Lucknow and Kanpur. Women and children are trapped. Terrible atrocities are committed by both sides. The rebels massacre British civilians. The British retaliate with a savagery that shocks the world. They blow rebels from the mouths of cannons. They burn entire villages. They hang thousands of people from the trees along the Grand Trunk Road. It is a race war, fought with the bitterness of a betrayed lover. But the company has one advantage. It has the telegraph and the steamship. It can coordinate its forces. It can bring in reinforcements from Burma and Persia and China. The rebels are brave, but they are divided. They have no central command. The Sikhs and the Gurkhas remain loyal to the British. Slowly, methodically, the company's armies retake the cities. They storm Delhi, they sack the city, they execute the sons of the emperor. The rebellion is crushed. But the victory is a Pyrrhic one. The violence of 1857 shocks the British public. They realize that a private company cannot be trusted with the power of life and death over millions of people. The fiction that the company is just a trading firm is over. The British government decides that it must take responsibility. In 1858, Parliament passes the Government of India Act. The East India Company is nationalized. Its territories, its army, its civil service, and its debts are transferred to the Crown. Queen Victoria becomes the Empress of India. The company is dissolved. The sun sets on the corporation that owned a nation. On the 1st of June, 1874, the East India Company ceases to exist as a legal entity. Its stock is paid off. Its ledgers are closed. The greatest predator in corporate history dies with a whimper, not a bang. But is it really dead? The physical company is gone, but its spirit lives on. The East India Company invented the modern world. It was the pioneer of the shareholder model. It proved that a small group of men in a boardroom could control vast resources on the other side of the planet. It created the model of global supply chains. It showed how political influence could be bought and how laws could be shaped to suit the needs of capital. When we look at the world today, we see the ghosts of the East India Company everywhere. We see multinational corporations that are richer than many nations. We see companies that hire private security forces that look a lot like private armies. We see companies that sue governments in secret tribunals to overturn environmental laws. We see the influence of lobbyists in the corridors of power. The East India Company was the prototype. It was the alpha test for global capitalism. It showed us the incredible power of the joint stock corporation to generate wealth. It built cities like Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. It connected the markets of Asia with the markets of Europe. It brought cheap clothes and tea to the masses. But it also showed us the dark side. It showed us what happens when the pursuit of profit is divorced from morality. It showed us that a corporation is a machine. It cannot feel pity. It cannot feel remorse. If it is profitable to starve a population, the machine will starve them. If it is profitable to sell drugs, the machine will sell them. If it is profitable to wage war, the machine will wage war. The story of the British conquest of India is not a story of national glory. It is a cautionary tale about corporate power. It is a reminder that the line between a business and a government is often thinner than we think. The men who sat around that table in London in 1600 did not set out to be monsters. They set out to make a return on investment. And in doing so, they created a monster that devoured a civilization. As we walk through the modern financial district of London today, we are walking on the foundations laid by the East India Company. The global financial system, the stock markets, the insurance companies, the trade networks, they all trace their lineage back to those early adventurers. We live in the world they built. A world where capital has no borders, and where the corporation is the dominant institution of our time. So the next time you hear a company talk about its values or its mission, remember the East India Company. Remember that its motto was Auspicio Regis et Senatus Angliae. Under the auspices of the King and the Senate of England, it claimed to serve the nation. But in reality, it served only itself. It was the corporation that owned a nation, and in the end, it taught the world a lesson that we are still trying to learn, that the hand of the market is not always invisible. Sometimes it holds a sword. I'm John, and this is the Cinematic History Tales channel. Subscribe now to stay ahead of the curve, because when the history books are written, you'll want to be among the few who saw it coming. If you want to see the next empire unravel before your eyes, don't forget to subscribe. Only those who pay attention learn what history hides.